Have you ever stopped to think that behind the words of Jesus there may be a map to awaken a hidden capacity that is within you? A key to transforming your life in a profound way. The pineal gland, often called the third eye in mystical traditions, is seen as a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds. Jesus' teachings in parables seem to contain clues about how this structure in the brain can take us to a higher level of consciousness. But do you know what is most surprising? This knowledge is not reserved for wise men or initiates. It is accessible to all who seek to understand the connection between the divine and the human. Throughout history, spiritual truths have been encoded in symbols to protect them from persecution. Jesus spoke of the temple of God not as a building made of stone, but as something alive in each of us. This vision resonates in several spiritual traditions and reveals a powerful secret. The true abode of the sacred is the human body itself. When we understand that we are the temple, we open the doors to an awakening that transcends rituals and dogmas, connecting us to the vital energy that permeates the entire universe. At the heart of this mystery is the pineal gland, a small structure in the brain. Often intuition and perception beyond the physical world. From a scientific point of view, it regulates circadian cycles and influences the production of melatonin. However, in spiritual traditions it is considered a portal to enlightenment and connection with higher dimensions of consciousness. Within the brain there is a little-known region called the cloister which, according to some esoteric interpretations, is responsible for secreting a subtle fluid known as oil or Christus. This oil travels a sacred path within the body, descends through the spine to the sacral plexus where it is strengthened and then ignites back to the brain, symbolizing an alchemical process of spiritual transmutation. This movement represents the journey of vital energy within us, a continuous cycle of descent and ascension. In symbolic terms, this process reflects the birth of Christ within each human being, not as an external figure but as a divine spark that needs to be awakened. This idea is present in several spiritual traditions that teach that true enlightenment occurs when inner energy is elevated and refined. A fascinating analogy can be found in the story of Santa Claus. The chimney through which he descends can be interpreted as the spine and the presence. Left under the tree would be the spiritual blessings granted by this sacred oil. In addition, the decorated and illuminated Christmas tree at the top recalls the symbolic representation of the spine and the activated pineal gland radiating light. This metaphor is not a mere coincidence. It reflects the idea that the human body is a microcosm of the universe where the divine manifests in cycles of renewal. Taking care of these seeds requires simple practices, a balanced diet, positive thoughts and meditation that prepare the ground for spiritual flourishing. But how to activate this process? The answer lies in the balance between body and mind. When the oil completes its descent, it begins the journey back to the brain, carrying with it the purified energy. This upward movement is the awakening of the mind. Take your eyes off the tree. A state of clarity that requires internal harmony. Techniques such as daily meditation, conscious breathing and yoga help to dissolve energy blockages, allowing the vital flow to circulate freely. Imagine the spine as a river. If the mind is agitated or the body is intoxicated, the course of the water is interrupted. Therefore, moments of silence, such as lying down for 10 minutes focusing on one breath, are essential to maintain the flow. True transformation, however, goes beyond the physical. When the oil reaches the pineal gland, an expansion of consciousness occurs. It is as if an internal light were turned on, revealing layers of reality that were previously they seemed invisible. This awakening is not reserved for the enlightened. It is a universal invitation. Jesus, in his parables, left a clue about this inner journey, showing that the kingdom of heaven is not out there, but within each one of us. The myth of Santa Claus, as well as other enchanting stories, echo this search for meaning. Presence. Chimneys and symbolic rebirth speak of something we all yearn for. The discovery of an inner power that transcends the ordinary. The pineal gland. In this context, it is more than a gland. It is a symbol of the human capacity to connect with the infinite. For those who are willing to explore this path, the journey begins with a simple step. Looking within is not necessary to be a mystic or a scholar. It is enough to cultivate practices that harmonize body and spirit, such as meditating, breathing attentively, and nourishing the mind with elevated thoughts. The key is to understand that spirituality is not an escape from reality, but a deep dive into the essence of who we are. The teachings of Jesus and ancient traditions converge on a single truth. The divine is not distant. It pulses in every cell, waiting to be recognized. Awakening the pineal gland is therefore not a magical act, but a reminder that the greatest revolution happens when we discover that the sacred has always been there within us, ready to guide each step towards the light. Spiritual life is like a seed. What seems insignificant at first can germinate into something extraordinary. When the energetic oil, this subtle force that runs through the body, begins to rise up the spine, it not only activates internal power centers, but reveals a path of clarity and purpose. This ascension is a living metaphor for the spiritual journey. The higher the energy, the more consciousness expands, illuminating previously obscure aspects of existence. However, this transformation does not occur magically. It requires patience, discipline, and the understanding that each step, no matter how small, is an essential part of a larger process. At the heart of this journey is the balance between two ancestral forces, Ida and Pingla. The energy channels that run along the spine. Ida, associated with feminine lunar energy, and Pingla, associated with masculine solar energy, represent polarities that coexist in all of us, regardless of gender. When these currents are harmonized, they create an internal state of balance, fundamental for the awakening of critical consciousness. The sacred union between the human and the divine. This balance is not only philosophical, it is practical. A simple technique like breathing can be the key. Inhaling through one nostril and exhaling through the other synchronizes these energies, bringing serenity and focus. Try it for a few minutes and notice how the mind calms down, making room for deep insights. This meeting between the Ida and Pingla and the solar plexus is like an inner alchemy. From this fusion, a new form of consciousness is born. The inner Christ is the cake of integration between opposites. The Bible, in its symbolic language, speaks of the promised land not as a geographical place but as a common state of spiritual fulfillment, achieved when the body and mind are in harmony. The activated pineal gland secretes a golden fluid similar to honey, while the pituitary produces a white liquid like milk. Together, they represent the biblical milk and honey, abundance and spiritual elevation. This metaphor comes to life when we take care of the body with natural foods, restful sleep and moments of introspection. Fresh fruits, vegetables and conscious habits nourish the pineal gland, keeping it healthy. It is like watering a plant that will bloom at the right time. However, the peak of this journey occurs when the sacred oil reaches the optic thalamus in the brain. This moment is compared to the resurrection of Christ not as a historical event but as a symbolic death of old mental patterns and a rebirth into an expanded consciousness is an intimate transformation felt as a heightened vibration that permeates body and mind. Practices such as guided meditation. The repetition of mantras facilitates this transition. 15 minutes a day of disconnection from the external world, focusing only on breathing, are enough to create an internal space where energy can freely ignite. Preserving this energy is crucial, just as a leaky vase does not retain water. Habits such as poor diet, chronic stress, or excessive ejaculation dissipate the vital force. The solution lies in small changes. Replacing processed foods with natural options, including rest breaks in the routine and learning to channel sexual energy. These adjustments are not about deprivation, but about redirecting internal resources to nourish not only the body but also the mind and spirit. When energy is preserved, it rises to the pineal gland, the single eye mentioned in the Bible. True enlightenment occurs. This small but powerful structure becomes a window to dimensions beyond the physical, revealing the invisible and expanding the perception of reality. It is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, everything makes sense. The promised land then ceases to be a distant metaphor and becomes a tangible experience. An internal state of peace, clarity and connection with infinity. The spiritual journey is therefore not about achieving the impossible, but about mastering the possible. Each conscious breath, each meal, each moment of silence are bricks that build a bridge between the ordinary and the extraordinary. And in the end, we discover that the true revolution is not in what we achieve out there, but in what we awaken within, a force that has always been present, just waiting to be recognized. The awakening of the pineal gland is not a mystery reserved for initiates or a concept. It is a real, tangible experience accessible to anyone willing to dedicate time and attention to the simple daily practice. It all starts with small adjustments that, when added together, create an internal environment conducive to activating this third eye, an energy center capable of expanding perception and reconnecting body, mind and spirit. Avoiding fluoride in toothpaste and treated water is a crucial first step. This mineral in excess can calcify the gland, blocking its function. Replacing it with natural alternatives paves the way for its revitalization. In addition, daily meditation, even for a few minutes, and conscious silence help to clear the mind, while exposure to the morning sun recharges the body with vital energy. Another powerful tool is specific sound frequencies, such as 936 Hz, which vibrate in resonance with the pineal gland. Stimulating its activity when the third eye begins to activate, the transformation is noticeable. Intuition sharpens but goes beyond that. Previously dormant brain cells are reactivated, promoting mental clarity and even physical regeneration. Is like turning on a light in a dark room. Previously invisible details take shape, revealing connections between the mundane and the sacred. Life begins to be lived with more depth, as if a veil had been removed. The connection between the pineal gland and the cycles of the moon is an ancient secret that crosses civilizations but remains little explored in the modern world. For 3 days each month, when the moon aligns with the sign of your birth, the body enters a unique state, becoming more sensitive to subtle energies. This period is an energetic portal, an ideal time for practices that expand consciousness and strengthen vital energy. Deep meditation, a light diet based on raw fruits, vegetables and purified water, in addition to the conscious retention of sexual energy, create perfect conditions for the rise of Kundalini energy through the spine. Visualizing a light rising from the base of the spine to the brain during these days helps to open a direct channel with the divine, accelerating inner awakening. The relationship between the pineal gland and the moon is also reflected in the esoteric tradition. Just as the moon reflects the light of the sun, the pineal gland reflects the light of higher consciousness. Its activation does not happen by chance, but rather by through constant dedication to spiritual practices that refine the inner self. With a year of discipline in these rituals, the transformation is undeniable. The mind becomes clearer. The senses sharpen, and spirituality ceases to be just a distant concept and becomes a real and tangible experience. The pineal gland is now awakened and acts as a cosmic antenna, tuning into higher frequencies and bringing in deep lucid dreams and an intense feeling of connection. Now that you know the steps, the choice is yours. Allow this knowledge to remain dormant or use it as a powerful tool to transform your reality. It doesn't have to be something complex. Small daily changes can start the process. Start today. Change your toothpaste for a fluoride-free one. Spend 10 minutes meditating in the sun, or try listening to frequencies of 936 Hz before going to sleep. The pineal gland is not just a structure of the body. It is a portal to higher dimensions of existence. And you are just a few daily practices away from crossing it. What comes next? A clearer, lighter, and infinitely more meaningful life. The invitation is made. The awakening is here. In your hands.